Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are in the world. This is the networking session of the Young Board of the International Food and Agribusiness Management Association, IFAMA. Today, we're going to be having three activities laid out to engage young professionals. This is not just a young professional session. If you want to engage with young professional, and you probably do not fall within the age limits that we're setting here, feel free to join us. We want to get insights from you too. Just a breakdown of what we're going to be doing today. The first part is going to be a introduction, or should I say reintroduction of the young board. So it's going to be a very short presentation that I'll be giving very soon. And then we're going to be having some messages from our sponsors, and then a panel discussion involving some young professionals where we talk about IFAMA's vision for global food security in 2050, looking at that from the lenses of young people. And to cap it up, we're going to be having a regional networking session. So if you look very closely at the tables there, you're going to see different regions, tables for different regions. So please feel free to join one of those tables, and we'll join you shortly. So I'll start with the presentation to tell you about what we represent as a young board. So can you cue in our PowerPoint slides, please? All right, so the young board at the 31st annual IFAMA conference. Next slide, please. Next slide. So first, I think it's a good place to start to tell us what we represent and who we are. So the Young Board, as I said earlier, is a group of young professionals that were put together with the aim of driving IFAMA's vision of global food security in 2050 among young professionals from industry, academia, and policy. We were constituted on May 18, 2020, and officially inducted on October 8, 2020 by the then President-elect Raj Badan. We initially constituted as a 7-member board, but because of the fact that we want more geographical spread and representation across different sectors, we've had some expansion over time. So at the moment, we're currently comprised of 9 members across Africa, Oceania, Latin America, North America, and Europe. We are currently also trying to increase our representation in Asia and Europe. So we have also been able to establish 4 young professional chapters in Africa, Oceania, Latin America, and North America. Next slide, please. So just for you to put faces to the names of the people that constitutes the Young Board team. So my name is Edobor. I'm a PhD student at Purdue University, Indiana, and I have the honor of being the first chair of the IFAMA Young Board. So next here is Melissa, who's our secretary. She's a lecturer at the University of, I think, Stellenbosch now. I'm sorry, that was where she worked before. We also have Jose Bolanos, who's our treasurer, is the CEO of Pineapple in Costa Rica. Next slide, please. We have Anafi Makamane, who's a lecturer and researcher at the University of the Free State in South Africa. So Justin McNally is our Canadian member who works in Lalemant Plant Care. Richard is a member that one of our members representing Oceania. He's a graduate student of Global Food and Agribusiness in University of Adelaide, Australia. Next slide, please. Jack Keys is our second Oceania member. He works in agri-food research and insights at KPMG, New Zealand. Tasia is a market strategist from Brazil. She's our second Latin American member. And then we have a European member who also represents Bayer Corporation, who's our sponsor. His name is Aaron Tepperman, and he's based off Germany. Next slide. So we also have people who support our activities and mentor us in some ways. Xander Bex, who's the chair of I for Nature in the Netherlands, is our chief support person and is assisted by Amber Akabum, who's a student in the Netherlands. Next slide. And as I said earlier, we have also established regional teams in 4 regions of the world, namely Africa, North America, Latin America, and Oceania. So Chico Chiovu is our coordinator in Africa. She is a graduate student in University of Pretoria, South Africa. Tatevik Avetsian is our coordinator in North America. She's an assistant professor of agribusiness in Cal State University, Chico, USA. Livia Garces, I'm sorry if I do not pronounce this name very well. She's our coordinator in Latin America. She's a PhD candidate in Australia, but she's based off Brazil. Lastly, William Robertson is our coordinator in Oceania, and he works with Frontier Cooperative Group in New Zealand. Next slide, please. So just a brief recap of our journey so far. Last year was when we started and were officially inducted. So far, we've been able to do 1 or 2 things, which we'll present to you in the next slides. So as I've alluded to before, in the past 1 year, we've been able to establish regional young professional networks in 4 regions of the world. We've organized virtual webinars on topical issues at the global and regional level. So at the global level, we talked about how the different regions of the world responded to COVID in one of our webinars. We've organized job market seminars. We've organized seminars on topical issues, including the Indian farmer crisis. We're at the regional level, we've also organized seminars on how to prepare for case studies, and I think one of our regions is currently looking at having an innovation challenge at the region. So that's something we're looking forward to, and we hope to do more of that as time goes on. So we've also anchored IFAMA's global young professional membership drive, and that's led to the registration of 1,029 new young professionals from 67 different countries. Besides that, we've been very integral parts of the 2 IFAMA digital conferences, the one of last year and this one we are having now. You'd have seen young professionals playing very active roles, visible roles like moderating, even speaking at some panels, and behind the scenes, we also worked on the case competitions, the essays as judges, and several other things we did as being part of the planning committee too. Also, we have just started a new global podcast. We're doing that in collaboration with Global Gap. We're thankful for that opportunity, and the global podcast is named the IFAMA Young Board Dialogues. It was our wish to actually launch it officially in this conference, but a lot of things happened, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to share the contents with you guys very soon. So please look out for that. We already have an episode done, and we should be able to share that with you very soon. So in addition to that, we've been involved with some strategic alliances. We're thankful to Bayer. We're part of the Bayer Youth Alliance for Agriculture, Innovation and Food Security, where we partner with other groups that are looking at youth-themed issues in agribusiness and how to, provide solutions to the problems in the sector. Also, we are involved with the Youth Alliance for Zero Hunger, which is an organization that is actually based off Rome. We work with Rome-based organizations like the FAO, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. So we're working with organizations like that to see how we can drive visions of those high-level organizations among young people too, and also, bring in our vision, our distinct vision as IFAMA to those kind of discussions. Next slide, please. So the road ahead. Next slide. So we're looking at what's next for us. In the very short term, what we're looking at doing is consolidating our regional networks. I just said we have regional networks in 4 different parts of the world. We still want to get to Europe and expand more there. Also, like expand more in Asia. So if you're very interested in being part of this in your region, please feel free to contact me. I'll get to that very soon. We're also looking at how to, celebrate those among us who are really, making changes, making impacts in the world. So this year we're looking at starting, preparations towards celebrating those people in our Rising Star Awards. So we're looking at young professionals that are affiliated to IFAMA that are doing great things out there in our sector. Also, we are working on completing our governance documents and white paper. So we've been just waiting to consolidate at the region so that we can put all of these things together so that we have, a kind of anchor or compass for what we want to do coming the next few years. And also because obviously we're kind of a little bit handicapped by COVID, I'll say it's more of an opportunity also because it also let us know how much we can do without, being together physically. So we're looking to have more webinars, more seminars, more mentoring sessions with some of our, top resource persons in IFAMA, where they could actually pass on their, knowledge to the next generation. So we're looking at things like case teaching sessions, partnering with some of our senior colleagues here to actually have young people know how to analyze cases, and then more networking sessions like this in the near future. Next slide, please. So, yes, we need you. By you, I mean, next slide. Next. Are you 18 to 35-year-olds? Keep going, please. Keep going, please. Are you an early career professional? Keep going. Are you a student? And are you passionate about food and agribusiness? So we need you guys, and this is what you can do for us. Keep going. Register to become an IFAMA member. The link, you just have to go to ifama.org and you'll be able to see the membership tab. Register as a young professional. There are different categories there that you can register that reflects that you're a young professional. So please, to be good if you can do that. Next slide. Next. Would also want to invite you to participate in our year-round events to become active members and leaders in your regional chapters. Keep going. You can follow us on our social media handles, which you'll see in the next slide. Keep going. And also, very importantly, we want to hear from you. We want to also have you on our mailing list. So you just have to send us a mail at iyb@ifama.org or through our regional chapters. You'll be having an opportunity to interact with our leaders at the regional chapter level very soon. So please give them your details. We want you to be part of what we are doing. We want you to be active members and leaders at that regional level. So I guess the next question you want to ask is, what is in this for you? So as you have seen so far during this conference, IFAMA offers young professionals an opportunity to engage with global leaders in the food and agribusiness industry. So that would be policymakers, CEOs, young professionals like you, innovators, and scholars. So by doing this, you're a part of a global think tank that generates insights and solutions to current food challenges. Next, please. So this also enables you to position yourself as a very worthy candidate in the job market, especially as being part of an exclusive global pool of agribusiness talents. Next, please. So it also afforded the opportunity to take advantage of professional development opportunities like networking, which we'll be having very soon, workshops, seminars, collaborations. I believe you'd have met people from all around the world, and you'd have been able to cross-pollinate ideas that will lead to the next big solution to an agricultural problem. So you can also be part of opportunities like our case competitions, special sessions. These might be the next internship opportunity you get. You might meet the next person that offers you an internship. And then of course we have a globally recognized journal, the IFAMA, where you can publish at a world-class level. So these are some of the things that I need for you. The list is something I cannot really exhaust here. So thank you so much. Next, thank you so much for being part of this session. There's still more in stock for you. Please just hold on. Can you share the slide again so people can see our contact details and how to follow us on social media, please? Just the last slide. Okay, yeah. So these are social media handles on Instagram, on Twitter, and our email. We want to thank Bayer for sponsoring us so far, and also Syngenta has also been a sponsor for us for some of our, youth-themed activities like our case study competition. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I'm Elizabeth with Syngenta. I'm based out of our Greensboro, North Carolina location, and I have just a few slides to share with y'all today. You'll go to the next one. Syngenta is a leading sustainable agriculture innovation and technology company, harnessing the diversity of our teams and expertise in more than 100 countries to deliver the broadest range of products and services for the benefit of farmers, society, and our planet. Our purpose statement is deeply embedded within the company. Syngenta delivers solutions dedicated to that one clear purpose, bringing plant potential to life. Next slide. In 2013, we launched our first Good Growth Plan with ambitious targets to complete by 2020, and we achieved most of those early. So here you can see some of our new commitments and targets for 2025. Our Good Growth Plan aims to take on challenges by making agriculture more resilient and sustainable and driving a better, greener recovery. To achieve global food security, we must recognize the imperative of yield gain, but also go beyond it to encompass all the resources involved. Our ambition is to bring greater food security in an environmentally sustainable way. So that calls for a step change in productivity and resource efficiency on both the world's 10 million large farms and its 480 million smallholder farms. Every grower has a part to play. Next, please. So neither Syngenta nor anybody else has all of the answers to meet the global challenges of food security, but collectively we can find those solutions. We need passionate people to create strong partnerships with farmers. We continuously engage with our stakeholders around the world to shape our understanding of the responsibility issues we must address in our everyday business. We need to further engage and collaborate with governments, NGOs, policymakers, food companies, and others to make the new vision of agriculture real. Syngenta encourages transparency and an open dialogue with governments and the independent research community on continuing research collaborations. Next, please. As you probably all know, ag is a vital industry and one of the largest employers in the world. We're working to solve some of the most pressing challenges, growing more food with fewer resources. At Syngenta, we strive to be the most collaborative and trusted team in agriculture. No matter the position, each person has a vital role to play in safely feeding the world and taking care of our planet. We have a distinctive culture and way of working where every employee has a role to play in shaping who we are and what impact we make. We nurture talent so you can grow and succeed and make a contribution that is truly yours. Next, please. This is just a high-level overview of the types of internships available at Syngenta in the US. So they're across all different sites in crop protection and seeds. So they range from agronomy, chemical engineering, IT, R&D, and so many others. But despite them being all so different, there are some things they have in common, like competitive wages, ongoing career development resources, and the opportunity to work on cutting edge products. So these are meaningful projects, not just summer work. And some of those ideas that our interns come up with get implemented and are still continued to be in use. And if you go to the next slide, this just highlights a couple of our entry-level opportunities. So I came through the production and supply development program in the supply chain track. I highlighted the seeds track here because I thought that might be more relevant to the audience, but there's also a chemical engineering track in that program. And then the other development program that we have is the developmental sales rep program. And so that's in different commercial units all across the country. And they have a program dedicated to sales. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to highlight this quick little visual here about some of the attributes that make an intern successful at Syngenta. So analytical, communication, conceptual, inventive, problem solver, and results driven. And so instead of just hearing from me about it, I have a video of one of our previous interns who actually joined us full time.
Hi, I'm Kinley, and I recently graduated from the University of Idaho. The previous summer, I completed an internship with Syngenta as a seeds production research intern in Pasco, Washington. During my internship, I advanced and developed many skills which have helped to prepare me for a role I currently hold in the production and supply development program within Syngenta, where I'm working with corn seed production. My internship gave me the opportunity to design and plan projects which I was responsible for managing and completing. I was also given responsibilities such as overseeing detasseling crews and working with growers. These opportunities allowed me to develop my knowledge of the seeds industry and exposed me to areas that I was unfamiliar with, leading me to pursue a career in seed production. When I was interning, I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do after graduation, so I took the opportunity to learn more about my career options and get a more in-depth look at the responsibilities of different positions. My internship with Syngenta gave me the resources to develop new skills, make connections within the industry, and ultimately help me to begin my career after graduation. Some advice I would give to those who are entering into an internship is to be open to new experiences and opportunities. There will be a lot you don't know, but be willing to ask questions and learn as much as you can about the industry you're working in. An internship is a great way to gain more experience and explore future career paths. It can also be a really helpful way to learn more about what you enjoy doing.
All right, and my final slide just had a QR code with a link to our job site. So it's also syngentajobs.com if anybody wanted to explore opportunities. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that very concise presentation. So the next thing we're going to be doing now is to get into a panel discussion session. I'll bring in the Secretary of the Young Board, Melissa, along with Shovu Shiko. We're going to be moderating that session. I'll be, chiming in a little bit at some point. Melissa, can you come up?
Thank you, Ed. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from my side as well, friends and family of IFAMA and the IFAMA Young Board. As Idioba mentioned, we are very excited to be part of IFAMA, and we look forward to deeper engagements with each and every one of you later this evening during the regional networking session, as well as during the rest of the week as we continue with the conference. So to kick off our discussions today, the Young Board has decided to link the IFAMA vision of food security by 2050 to the conference theme of this year, which is Innovations Reshaping the Future of Food, as a type of a conversation starter to get the young professionals and students in a room to have these very important conversations. Today, we have the privilege to talk about innovation, technology, collaboration, and sustainability with some of our young board members who fill positions in the agricultural sector across the globe. From Edioba's introductions, you'll see that we really are a global network and a global young board representing many of the different regions across the globe. So in that light, I would also like to invite all of you to participate in the Q&A. If you have anything to contribute or if you have any questions for any of the panel members, we will be keeping an eye on the Q&As. So to your right-hand side, you'll see that there's chats, and then you'll also see there's a Q&A button. So if you click that, then it will bring up the Q&A where you can ask some of your questions. We'll tend to that as we continue. Edioba, I think let's get the show on the road. I think if you could introduce the panel to us just briefly, because not all the young board members are part of the panel. I think that would help us to just know who is part of the panel that can help us navigate some of these tricky concepts.
All right, thank you so much, Melissa. The panel is going to consist of Aaron Tepperman, who is our European member and also Bay Area representative from Germany. The next person here is Justin McNally, who works at Lallemand, Canada. He's our Canadian representative. And then we have Juan Jose Bolanos, who's the treasurer of the Young Board. He's the CEO of Pablo in Costa Rica. We also have Jack Keys here, who's our Oceania representative from New Zealand. He works at KPMG as part of the Agribusiness and Food Insights team. And then lastly, we have Anathi Makamane, who's a lecturer at the Free State. She's our second African representative. We have a co-moderator here, Shiko Shiovu. She's also the coordinator of the African chapter. Thank you.
Apologies, African signals. I think most of my participants can relate. So since we are talking collaborations across disciplines and across borders, and this is also one of the main strategic goals for IFAMA, to reach food security by 2050, I think it would be sort of great to start our conversation with collaborations, given our international audience as well. So I would like to kick off with Aaron. Welcome, Aaron. I'm happy to see that you made it to the stage with us. Since you are working in value chain development, I can imagine that most of your day revolves around strengthening food systems and chains for food security purpose. How can companies like Bayer use collaborations with the agri-food value chain to support the strengthening of food systems?
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. I think everybody can hear me now, and my apologies for some of the technical minor issues at the beginning, but it's great to be here and great to see everybody. And you know, I think the youth events and things focused on youth and the Young Board and the great work that the Young Board has done, over the last year or so to really get established and drive such an exciting and full program is really great. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll get a chance, I think, hopefully, if the timing is there, to talk a little bit more about, my work and what Bayer is doing in food systems and collaboration and partnerships and ag development. But yeah, I mean, as Melissa said, I'm focused a lot on value chain development, and I think, as I heard just the colleague from Syngenta say briefly, that there is no one company or one organization, be it from the nonprofit sector or the private sector, foundations, associations, that can do this alone. So bringing all sorts of different groups to the table to try to look at these global challenges require global solutions, and that means multi-stakeholder approaches. So that's really how we're coming at value chain development, is really trying to seek out understanding what the role of every organization is, where their incentives lie, and then trying to find these win-win-win partnerships that are ultimately deriving value for all of the stakeholders or operators in the value chain. We recognize it's very easy to say these kinds of buzzwords or keywords and think about what value chain development means, but when we get on the ground, and I'm working every day from my desk in Germany with my colleagues in Zambia, in Malawi, in Kenya, and I'm really understanding what their needs are, and then sending the clear message that the partnerships we want to drive are there to support their business, and that they know the needs that they have on the ground to serve the smallholder farmers that we're really trying to work with and benefit. So in my mind, it's really about a collaborative approach and building trust and listening along the supply chain, and asking the difficult questions about what does it look like to really be sustainable. And that might be different for a foundation and for a private company, but ultimately we want the growers, the producers, the cooperatives, and the farmers to be in the position to grow, to benefit, and to find value.
Thanks, Aaron. I think you alluded to some of the challenges that you face when you need to collaborate, especially when you need to collaborate across borders. Jack, I would like to switch over to you, since we've had this discussion a while ago, where we talked about how difficult it is for these collaborations to be successful. So given your experience, can you perhaps share some of the greatest barriers that individuals and businesses face to really unlock these collaboration opportunities?
Yeah, thanks, Melissa, and hello everyone from Auckland, New Zealand. So I think if we're talking about barriers, and hopefully we'll come to the opportunities for those later, but the barriers, I think number one that probably everyone on this call can understand, is the word busy. I think not only has that been accelerated through this new term of COVID fatigue, but we're all very used to working pretty long weeks. All of us here probably work longer hours than we should. And we're very focused on our day-to-day activities and just keeping up. So to add collaboration and innovation on top of what's already really busy time for all of us is almost impossible. So we haven't, for a lot of people, we're currently just focused on that day-to-day and don't get that opportunity for a step back to look at what those collaborative and innovative opportunities are. I think a couple of other challenges that also align with this is we often do have a lack of cross-discipline. I know this varies from country to country, but we often have individuals getting trained in one career path and one more specific subject, and that means that individuals themselves often lack cross-disciplinary knowledge. And then on top of that, you've also got the fact that organizations often operate quite individually, and there's a lack of cross-organizational collaboration, which means that we have individuals operating within disciplines, and then we have businesses operating within disciplines. And business-to-business relationships are usually something that's contractual, and it's usually something that operates on a project-to-project basis rather than true open collaboration. And to top it all off, I know, again, this changes from country to country, but particularly a lot in agribusiness and agri-food, we've got to this point where we've got essentially a global talent war. So globalization has been excellent to allow us to work all over the world, particularly when borders are open. But now we've got this point where we've got this global talent war. And as a result of that, we're seeing people move from job to job, company to company, and sometimes country to country within every 2 to 3 years, because they're not getting that opportunity to interact with other organizations and disciplines. So they think they have to change a whole new career to enable that. And so those are sort of 3 of the key barriers that I'm seeing in my role.
Thanks, Jack. That's very interesting. I know some of the regional, in some of the regional sessions, there are also sessions that talks about, job opportunities and specifically how people move from one job to another within the time span of only a few years and the reasons behind that. So I think it would be great for our participants to also keep an eye on the schedule for those specific sessions to maybe learn something in those sessions. But if you don't mind, you sort of mentioned a little bit getting into the opportunities. I'm sure since you've thought about all the barriers that there are to collaborations, you surely must have thought about some opportunities that exist or some actions that businesses can take to empower more innovation and collaboration. Can you perhaps elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. The opportunities is the fun stuff, right? So I think when we look at this, it's easy to just think of like small solutions or things that we think will empower change, but we've known about these problems for a really long time and still nothing's changing. So for those on the call and listening today, especially those in decision-making roles, I'd really challenge you to take a proper look at this, because the value when people can properly collaborate and innovate is huge. And so I think the first opportunity is just changing the way we look at the work week. Most people aren't empowered to have a step back and look at strategic opportunities or to look at innovative opportunities. Some of the more innovative tech companies around the world have a 4-day work week and then a 1-day that's focused purely on any type of innovation they want. And that doesn't mean sitting at the same computer desk and then getting distracted by your emails and working the same day you normally do. It means getting out of that environment, whether it's with another organization or outside your environment altogether, and having that opportunity to really think a lot wider and broader about what strategic and innovation and collaboration opportunities there are. I think also equally importantly, and it could align with that restructuring of our work weeks, is that we need to encourage forever learning. So people need to be empowered to be learning ongoing. We all know that the world's accelerating as fast as it ever has. And so relying on a bachelor's degree earned many years ago isn't good enough. And just learning within your own role, sure, that's valuable, but it's still not enough. To be able to stay on top of the emerging technologies, to stay on top of new cross-disciplinary approaches, we need to encourage continuous learning for individuals so that they can keep across all of these opportunities. And thirdly, when we've got people switching from company every 2 to 3 years, that's, again, it's a good opportunity for individuals, but perhaps it's a missed opportunity when it does take time to bring individuals and implement them and embed them into a company. And so between businesses, we really should be being a lot more disruptive and creative about how we think about our human resource and how we share that across companies. If we were empowering more people to have short-term placements at other companies, maybe even competitors, but at least complementary companies, then that would allow people to get that different type of thinking, understand different structures without having to swap jobs every 2 or 3 years. And so I think there's a really big opportunity to allow more companies to align with each other and share resources and share people, whether that is in cross-functional teams within different organizations, or allowing people to go and do more placements. So I think those are 3 of the key opportunities, but I'm sure there's many more as well. So it'll be exciting to watch further presentations at the conference.
Thanks, Jack. On that note, I think, of course, we expect these things to be different between developed countries and developing countries. So I would like to shoot this one at Juan Jose and ask, if you can elaborate perhaps a little bit on the developing country perspective. So what is the actual environment in Latin America regarding agribusiness, and how is innovation and collaboration coming to the different value chains where you are at?
Hello, Melissa. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for that. And say hi to everyone in the meeting from Costa Rica. Well, the question or your comment right now is quite large. You know, I have a big responsibility because I have to give a perspective of the whole Latin America. As a developing countries, we have a lot of different realities in each country, and I think that's something quite difficult to summarize. But in the end, the realities in all these countries brings always the focus of attention of the collaboration internationally from governments. Big companies as Bayer and Syngenta are thinking on developing countries and Latin America and Africa was also found. And there are two realities in these countries. The big companies working with the resources in those countries, meaning pineapple growers, banana growers, and other food industry developing their business in those countries, that with their activities kind of impact successfully, positively the communities where they are. And I think that's a reality where you see a lot of innovation coming to reality with technology, with getting closer to productions to agriculture precision and things like that are impacting positively the environment and adapting their companies to the climate change. And the second reality in these countries are the smallholders, farmers that also divide themselves by two. Like there are smallholders interconnected with these larger companies, so they are part of the value chain, and there are also smallholders more in their own local markets trying to develop their business and also approach into the local production and local distribution. In this reality, you find innovation coming to the second or the latest with a new kind of products, or trying to being brought to produce new varieties of produce, or even biomass for energy, or even textile or biomass for textile. So there is a lot of going on in Latin America. I think that bioeconomies and also the bioproducts regarding waste of different industries will be very interesting in the future. All this involved in a generational gap, and bringing new generations into agriculture is also something that will be part in the future for the developing countries, and is a challenge right now, but it's also an opportunity. Whenever I've seen in different opportunities, entrepreneurs regarding agribusiness, developing apps to socialize, for example, weather forecasts. So you can find your weather forecast in your phone by this app development. And that helps a lot to smallholders in different areas of the developing countries. And that kind of examples, I think, is one of the things that you will see in difference from collaboration in developed countries, is that they will be working in three parts with the private companies, and the governments related programs, and the smallholder trying to develop new alternatives and innovation in their own businesses.
Thank you, Juan Jose. So there's definitely a little bit of a difference, I would say, in how we adopt the technologies between the development or the developed countries and the developing countries. So sticking to developing countries, Amati, let me call on you. Given your background in agricultural extension, what is the landscape like in South Africa compared to what Juan Jose just explained in Latin America? So I was wondering if there's a role to play in collaboration and innovation through some of the extension programs we see in developing countries.
Thank you, Melissa, and good evening to everyone from South Africa. I'm actually glad that you highlighted the comparisons between the two different worlds, because it is quite vast. Now, what we see in developing countries is that collaborations is a strange concept. especially with smallholder farmers. It is a strange business concept, mainly because the term comes from a developmental narrative. Okay. Now, in many ways, what we see in South Africa and in most developing countries is that the objectives when it comes to these collaborations as well as partnerships is not clear. So we don't really see what is in it for everyone, okay? And with extension, with extensive input from agricultural advisory as well as extension in South Africa, we have seen that it has helped when it comes with partnerships, when now, the interests are better defined and it is clearly stated, where the relations are and, when it comes to the mutual interest, as well as benefits that are shared between the different stakeholders. Now, the face of agriculture and rural development has changed over the years, and the complexity of the challenges when it comes to the 21st century in rural development in developing countries over the years has also really changed. Now, this complexity has called for a rethinking when it comes to agriculture and the role of extension as well as advisory services. So in South Africa, it recognizes, we recognize and we use the input of, agriculture innovation systems quite a lot. And we do this to strengthen the capacity to innovate as well as to create novelty throughout the agricultural production as well as the marketing systems. Oh, thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, Anati. So I'm going to hand over to Ed at this point.
Thank you very much, Melissa. It's been a very, dedicated session so far. So I would want to, something I noticed from, Melissa, I noticed over the past year that our the COVID pandemic kind of redesigns the way we collaborate and also, the incentive for this collaboration. So I want to take us back to Juan. Given the disruptions in the agricultural value chains that COVID brought about, can you, a bit shed more light on how the Latin American region is collaborating to ensure resilient food value chains to ensure food security?
Thank you, Ed. That's a learning process right now in every country in Latin America. But obviously those situations regarding COVID last year and in the present have shown us some weaknesses in the value chains that we are trying to approach in Latin America, think different perspectives. As Aaron said before, it has to be a multi-stakeholder solution to really make resilient value chains, to really create a adaptable value chain for the different countries. When you think about what weaknesses were shown by the COVID, were also a part of the food security of the different countries. So what I've learned in the last several months is that countries are working harder to create their own food security. Sometimes they depended much into imported products for production, or have looked more of their exports into their business strategy. Now they're working together with other stakeholders regarding agricultural and agribusiness in their countries to develop safe security for their population. I mean, they're looking at their trading, they're looking at their resources, income, and they're looking at also for the benefits that they have for the agriculture in each country. And also they are also worried with this interorganizational support or collaboration to create more knowledge and to create adaptability within the different growers and in the regions, to create their skills enough to respond to the different changes. Some other strategies that were shown weak was the logistics in the regions. For example, in Central America, most of the or highly volume of the exports within the region were blocked by the lockdown in the different countries. So they start thinking in alternatives for transportation also, because they were only thinking in land transportation. And then after these lockdowns were happening there, they start looking for alternatives to use the sea, even though we're in the region. But then to establish a plan B has something that it has become very important in the strategies of the trading in the region. And third of all, I think we have also an innovation coming out of this situation of COVID-19, how we can cope the different challenges that we have in the future. Is that most or part of the innovations that we're dealing with is that how we can have longer shelf life for the products that are fresh, and how we can also distribute our products in different ways or different value chains. So I think it has been, like I said in the beginning, a very strength learning process, but it's still ongoing. And I know that the different countries are collaborating in different manners and subjects with organizations or in Latin America and universities to create this resilience that is so necessary for the future.
Yeah, I mean, as someone whose roots is from a developing region of the world, I see a lot of collaboration, especially at the National Agricultural Research System level. I believe it's kind of different in more developed context. So I'd want to know from you, Justin, as someone who practices in a developed part of the world, how has the developed world kind of dealt with this challenge of COVID, especially with respect to labor shortages? Can you elaborate on how they handle the situation at the time, and moving forward, do you think this issue of labor shortage would be eliminated altogether?
Hi, thank you, Adoba, and thanks everyone for listening. And hello to good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to everyone on the call, especially to those listening in North America. So to Adoba's question, from my perspective, I feel like the challenge we face, especially for me living in Canada, the last 16 months, we've had the border closed. And that has been really difficult for producers who rely heavily on skilled migrant workers. We in Canada use about 60 to 80,000 skilled migrant workers from the Caribbean and Latin American countries. And they usually come up in the spring or in the winter, and then they're here for a while until pretty much the whole growing season. This pretty much covers our specialty crops such as vegetables, greenhouse crops, as well as cannabis, as well as fruit crops. The challenge with that is that a lot of these, with the COVID crisis hitting last year, a lot of growers were kind of faced with this, that they weren't able to have their labor. And so what ended up happening was a lot of crops went unharvested. Part of the other issue too was that the Native Canadians that are who have that knowledge, who have a knowledge gap, were disenfranchised and not interested in going back to the farm. So that kind of didn't help as well for some of these for more of these specialized crops. But then if you look in Western Canada, where we grow grains, oilseeds, and primarily larger acres, where we don't rely as much on migrant workers. Instead, we rely more on their seasonal, traditional. Traditionally, they're here for 1 year, usually from Australia or South Africa. They end up helping with harvest and seeding, and usually they're one or two workers that will be hired by some of these larger farms to help with these tasks. And usually it's because of the flip of the season, so it just works out for them that they are able to get some cash flow at these times. And so back to from what I feel, the way that I feel is, I think that COVID has really showed that even in a developed country, it's definitely very difficult if you rely a lot on specific skill sets for, especially with labor and that sort of thing. And I think the key thing to really notice and pay note to is that we need to improve our knowledge within our population and try to give them more incentive to go back to work on the farm and to be instead of relying heavily on outside workers to come in and help that are definitely very skilled and good at what they do. The other thing as well is in some of these other places, I feel as though that there already was a labor shortage, and it made it very difficult for farmers to find proper labor, especially like skilled tractor drivers, combine drivers and sprayers, that sort of thing. So from what I feel, the way I feel is that there's also companies that are taking advantage of this and looking more at the autonomous ag and looking at technology that can potentially take some of these jobs and make it a little bit less onerous on the farmer to so that he can maybe put a kit in his tractor that will make it more of autonomous rather than having to rely on someone that might not be as reliable. Thank you, Adoba.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's going to be very good to see how the dynamic in terms of like how labor is being, reappropriated due to technology application, how that might affect, less skilled workers and things of that nature. So back to you, Juan. Since the onset of the pandemic, many of us have realized how important technology is and how it's almost impossible to remain competitive without the use of technology. However, it seems like agriculture is usually the slow-moving sector when you compare it with medicine, defense, and maybe manufacturing, how cutting-edge technologies churned out in those sectors. So given your farm-level experience as the CEO of Pineapple, can you elaborate on some of the technologies that are emerging in the agri-food value chain?
Sorry, yes, and I think it's quite interesting. I mean, as in developing countries, we found, like I said before, two realities, and tech in agriculture will be becoming more of a day-to-day thing for the smallholder, thanks to this kind of innovation in technology, where you will have the capability of do things within your own hardware, with your phone or your mobile phone or your computer. But there is a deep concern in different countries also for their reach to the Wi-Fi or internet access. So I think that's something that it might be coming in the future, something that we are more we're seeing more in the different developing countries, how the smallholders will be having access to internet and technologies that are more feasible and cheap for their work to do. This goes for that level of development that it holds under the smallholder. But there is another that is calling most of my attention. There are three different strategies in agriculture that are quite interesting. I think in Latin America, for us, it's going to be very used in agriculture, in precision agriculture, the use of sensoring, remote sensoring is the right word. So this remote sensoring will be giving us the opportunity to make in-time decisions and really connect to our farm and to give it the right direction, whether the weather is going to be very rainy or very sunny, and whether it's missing some nutrients inside of our production. So that's one of the things that is calling most of my attention. I think it's going to be also worked in this conference. During the conference, there are some people talking about this. The second one is how the biotech is being involved in the agriculture, how we have now resistant variants for different diseases or pests that are working with the production in a way that there is more efficient and more efficient and co-efficient and eco-efficient. I mean, that's the word, because it will use less herbicides or pest control products. So it will help us to be more sustainable. And the third one, but not less, is also how the new technologies are producing new products, like new alternative of proteins or new alternative of different products that we use in ingredients or as ingredients in different food consumption. So I think those alternatives or those technologies are the most interesting ones, and it's also affecting Latin America, and there are some entrepreneurs working in this and some big companies also working in them. So I think that's, from my perspective, what calls more my attention, Ed. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Juan. We'll go back briefly to Justin. Justin, Juan just highlighted some technologies. Do you think farmers will be willing to adopt technology faster than they have in the past? And what sort of technology do you think we'll see being adopted first?
I would think that farmers probably will be seeing more adoption of technology as I've seen working even in the industry briefly. I've noticed more push towards, as Juan was talking about, sensing and sensors and that sort of thing. We've gone from using satellites to now using drones, and the imagery has even come really a lot further in the last 5 to 10 years, and it's made it a lot more cost efficient as well, going from almost $15 to $20 an acre down to $2, making it very cost effective for the farmer. So I know a lot of farmers are using this imagery right now as we speak, for help with the remote sensing, and then also to correlate with soil testing and things of that nature. So from my perspective, I feel as though that's probably the easiest low-hanging fruit to continue along that track. Having worked in a company that prior to this role, I was working for a company that produced autonomous agricultural tractors. We were actually producing a platform that was available for the farmer that would be able to do a farm for 24 hours straight. And the farmers were very speculative of it. They didn't really know if it was going to work. They were concerned about, they really wanted to be in that cab. They really wanted to have the feel, the touch, to be able to see what they were doing. And they weren't really sure about the safety and things of that nature. So I know a lot of companies, actually the company I was working for got purchased by a different company, and recently actually was just purchased by CNH for about $2.1 billion this last week. And so I know that, and I think they're probably looking at it and saying that there's definitely a move towards this sort of technology, and they look at where we're at right now with the labor problems, as I spoke about earlier, and things of that nature, that farmers are somewhat more ready for some of these technologies as they move away from being in the tractor and more from being at the farm. I think also, though, that there's being more on the precision side, it really helps with cost effectiveness, and the farmer really can look at it and really understand where it's going to the bottom dollar. And that if it helps them cut costs, especially with biotechnologies, things of that nature, which was what I deal with on day in, day out. We primarily work with mainly biologicals, such as natural bacterias and biostimulants that are used for plant for either insecticides that are very helpful that don't cause issues with bees and beneficials, things of that nature. That it's definitely moving forward with that, especially with we'll be talking about next in my for my next talk. But I think that we are definitely moving towards more technology, and I think that the low-hanging fruit being sensors and biologicals.
Yeah, you raised very important points that I've also thought about, like how farmers' experience could actually affect their demand for some of this technology. Like their farmers just love the feel of being able to drive the tractor, to kind of know these things and be in control, as opposed to having some sort of automation. And if we even go down in the value chain, there are people, for example, who want to go to the grocery shop and do the shopping themselves just for the experience, as opposed to, maybe doing it online, for example. So while technology is definitely, taking over most parts of the way we do these things, there are people who probably still, want to get that experience, that traditional experience. And I'm just wondering how that affects demand. So I'll turn it over now to Chico to, moderate the remaining parts of this session and ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. I'm actually thinking about my upbringing in Zimbabwe and Mozambique, especially my experiences with the smallholder farmers. And this makes me wonder if we're to expect the same reception from smallholder farmers in the developing country. And yeah, I'd like to include you, Anati. Given your experience with smallholder farmers, how easy or difficult is it for them to keep up with technology demands? And is there any way that we can support them in the process?
Thanks, Chico. So when it comes to continuous innovation, it is obviously the basis for success, especially for an African setting where, the standard as well as mainstream approaches are not always applicable. For instances, when it comes to smallholders, they have to innovate and get around, many obstacles like lack of economies of scale, high risk profiles, and generally just poorly developed linkages when it comes to the markets. Now, to answer your question on how easy or how difficult, that is unfortunately very relative. And extension workers play a huge role when it comes to capacity development. However, there are quite a few challenges that are faced with, that are faced by our farmers, and these include inadequate information. So generally, when it comes to new technologies as well as information, and innovation, they come with a new set of skills that need to be learned. So when it comes to a lack of knowledge about an innovation, as well as the time that you will spend to learn this new skill, it can create a barrier to keep up. Another challenge that we see with our farmers is the inadequate financial support. So they normally often lack, the capital to implement these new technologies. And many farmers also have limited access to credit, or even the available, credit comes with high interest rates, and that, and on its own also just creates a huge barrier. Another challenge that we see with our smallholder farmers in developing countries is inadequate institutional support. So this could come from the government or NGOs or, development agencies. And, this is quite crucial when it comes to implementing any new technologies. So without the proper policies that might come from government, or any incentives that come with adopting to a new, technology, the adoption of, technologies or innovation could be delayed, and it is actually the case in developing countries. So yes, again, like I said, it is quite relative, and we can't really tell how easy or how difficult, but our farmers are still facing quite a few challenges. Thanks, Chico.
Thank you so much for that. I think another important consideration that we have is sustainability. Given the keynote by Sunny, we heard how sustainability is growing in importance. We also have a session tomorrow on the farm to fork strategy and how the European Green Deal, that is very much focused on sustainability, could potentially disrupt farming operations across the world. Justin, given your experience with our farming sector and the demands from companies such as Green Mills, Pepsi, McDonald's, and Walmart towards regenerative agriculture and animal welfare, do you think that farmers will be able to meet those lofty goals?
Thank you, Chico. I think that it's definitely very challenging for farmers, but I think that they probably will be able to. If you look at a couple of different there's a couple different standards that they've set, especially on the welfare side, primarily moving away from battery cages for egg production, as well as and then also farrowing crates for swine production, which were both very controversial. There's been a move in the last 5 to 10 years to eliminate those from production sites and move more to a hybrid system. That a lot of these organizations, a lot of the farming groups have pushed more for funding to help upgrade some of these facilities to move away from that, as well as the consumers really pushing more for it. But recently, though, I feel the regenerative agriculture has become more of a hot topic, and we've seen a lot of retail, especially Walmart, McDonald's, General Mills, and a few that are around here, being Ardent Mills, and a couple others that are really pushing for this the topic of being regenerative rather than sustainable. And it's kind of an interesting point, being that they're able to, or regenerative pretty much means that you're pushing more for above and below ground, as well as ensuring that you're going to be seeing increasing your soil fertility, biodiversity, water retention, cleanliness, and soil carbon sequestration. These are all done in different ways because each of these companies are looking at it from a different point of view. But the nice thing about it is it allows for the farmer that they're already doing some of these things on their farm. Some of these examples being in North America being controlled traffic farming, meaning that you're basically going in the same area all like there's this technology that allows for the farmer to plant, spray, not have to change their path when they're going. The other thing is there's also been the sectional control and overlap control that's helped with turning on and off of equipment to allow for so you're not wasting fertilizer, seed, that sort of thing. And then also there's organizations such as Alice Canada and Regeneration International, which are allowing for companies to, or allowing for farmers to take advantage of and getting money for projects that they might not normally do on their farm. So some of these being putting a shelter belt in to keep wind erosion from blowing topsoil off the farm. Especially this is a big issue in some of Western Canada and Western US, where you'll run into where it's very windy and you lose your organic matter, especially if you do tillage. But that has also been a big thing. Is there's also been a lot more movement towards no-till farming, which has become more of a common practice, allowing for better organic matter in the soil and also healthier microbes. Working for a company that we predominantly work with microbes and biologicals, we have been definitely seen in the last 10 years the growth of the biological sector and movement towards using one of these into a spray cycle, so that they're not having to rely as much on chemicals to help with environmental issues, as there's definitely certain circumstances where sprays are being oversprayed. And so with these reasons, I feel as though there definitely is some that farmers are definitely able to move towards this, as they are. A lot of farmers are already doing some of these practices on their farm. So thank you, Chico.
Thank you so much, Justin. It sounds as though there are quite a number of farmers who still do need the on-the-job training to enable them to reach the demands that companies might have, especially with the pull that comes with the ever-changing consumer demands. While on this topic of training and education, Ed, I know that you've had the privilege of being educated in two development contexts. What do you think are the imperatives in terms of agricultural pedagogy if global food security is to be achieved, especially in the developing parts of the world?
Oh, thank you very much, Chico. Um, to start with, I think one of the things we'd have to look at is having a more flexible interdisciplinary approach. Jack actually pointed to that earlier, but he was looking at it from a business perspective. Um, it's possible that you could be, just learning a lot of things, but you're in a silo. So what I noticed in the developed context compared to where I'm coming from was that there seems to be more flexibility in the learning process. Like you get to learn a lot of things. There's a need to bring in knowledge from different aspects, and that's what students here are afforded the opportunity to do. And I think this also goes to IFAMA's global vision, which our founder, Professor Ray Goldberg, always talks about, bringing people from different, parts of the food systems. You might think, for example, that a medical doctor might not have a bearing in food, but the truth is food is medicine. And, when you go to the doctor, you have to. So being that kind of robust student that learns these different, parts of, the academic spectrum, it's something that we need to embrace in our part of the world, like not just, give people rigid curriculum to learn from. So I'm looking at a situation where agriculture students are able to learn from different disciplines while still having some level of specialization in what they do. So I kind of envision a situation where students might be able to declare majors, major routes or pathways for themselves in maybe production. So you learn a lot about production, but you also learn from these different other, fields of studies, because the problems that we really have today in our global food systems are not just a one subject problem. Climate change is something that you would need an engineer in the room, you need an environmentalist, you need an economist, and you need an animal production specialist. So we need to be able to have that cross pollination of ideas when we learn as agriculturists in the developing world. So as I was saying earlier, I'm envisioning a case where we have three major routes, like people who are learning to be in production, people who are learning to be in extension, because as Anafi pointed out, that's something that we really need to build on. And it should start from when we are learning. It shouldn't be when we become professionals, because the way we treat extension in Africa, especially at the university level, it's like a discipline of its own. Whereas it should be something that everybody does. So whether you're an animal scientist, you should have an extension component to what you do. Whether you are a soil scientist, you should have an extension component to what you do, as opposed to it just being one distinct discipline. And then we also need people who are trained to be managers. So as I said, people in production, people whose training kind of is shaped for them to really be in extension, and people who are going to be in management. And that thing where I feel we can also have improvement is in our quantitative emphasis. I'm a strong advocate for math education. I think that's something that we need. For one thing, the ability to work with numbers and make logical inferences is a very integral part of decision making. So quantitative emphasis plus computer-related pedagogy is something that I think we should really look at. Most of the skills that we need in our sector today are things that requires very deep knowledge of computer skills. This is not the generation where we make decisions by using Excel sheets. You'll have to learn skills like forecasting, simulation, data analysis, and these are becoming more and more in demand. We are as in the developing part of the world is where food security is even a more imminent challenge. So if there are projections to be made, forecasting to be made, it's most likely that people are talking about the developing regions of the world. So we need these skills. And also the reality of COVID has shown us how much work we could do virtually. So being able to work with the computer is something that's very important. And lastly, we need to look at the aspect of hands-on pedagogy. So there's a lot that we can do outside the classroom. Students can be taught in such a way that their education revolves around things like doing relevant projects, solving cases, going on internships. And I think these are areas where we might need people like our sponsors, Bayer and Syngenta, who have representation or presence in those areas where you can maybe open up opportunities for internships and probably even exchanges for students from these developing worlds to see how agribusiness and the agricultural sector is being carried out in other contexts, so that they could probably transfer some of the lessons they've learned to this region. So I think these are things that we need to look at. Of course, some of these issues, they're not just a one sector issue. Some of them are structural. It might boil down to like the funding that our universities and our research systems receive. So yeah, it's not just something that we just use one stone to kill. We might need to look at it from different perspectives. There's a role for government. There's a role for industry. Yeah, so that's what I would say.
Thank you so much for that, Ed. I think you touched on a very important note, which is learning should go beyond the classroom. Don't just limit yourself to what you learn in class, but take the initiative to get out there and learn more beyond your degree as well. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, co-moderators, and thank you, panelists. This was a very insightful session, and I think it's a great start to the rest of the evening. I think at this point, Chair, if you allow, I think we can give Aaron some time to talk a little bit about Bayer and what they have on offer.
All right, excellent. Thank you. So yeah, thanks everybody again, and this is a great opportunity, and I want to give just a short presentation and overview about a little bit about Bayer. And I'll start with kind of high level Bayer by the numbers, get into a little bit about our commitments to sustainability and smallholders. From there, talk a little bit about the function or the group that I'm in. And then from there to really what I'm doing in terms of my day-to-day work. Don't be overwhelmed. I will be quick and concise, and hopefully we'll be through the slides in a few minutes. Next slide, please. So Bayer, is a global ag input company as well. It's also a life sciences company with over-the-counter consumer health division, as well as a pharmaceuticals division. I work for the crop science division. And you can see there just a few of the numbers, and the one that I always like to point out to is the 2 billion in R&D, and that really shows, I think that follow the money, and here it is really about innovation and driving the future, products and services and technologies of agriculture that are going to, contribute and really help drive the sustainability agenda as well. Next slide, please. So what are the sustainability commitments? You can see here that we have, as Bayer, kind of three big commitments, and the last one is the one that's closest and nearest and dearest to my heart and to my everyday work, and that's touching on empowering smallholder farmers to access sustainable agricultural solutions. And that's what I'll talk about a little bit more in the next couple minutes. But just to highlight the first two, obviously carbon, is a major discussion and becoming more and more prominent across the agricultural sector and industry. So there's a big commitment to a reduction in carbon. And the second one is about, kind of producing more with less. So a recognition certainly that, maybe what used to work for a company like Bayer, who is over, 100 years old, in terms of maybe a volumes-based model of ag inputs like crop protection products, it's certainly, a recognition that not necessarily or may not, be the model for the next 100 years. And so, this commitment really speaks to the fact of, how do we, bring advances in biotechnology and, agricultural development that really allows us to, produce more with less. And the right-hand side of the slide, you can kind of see what are the three guiding, focus areas for our crop science strategy. Are captured in the blue, the red, and the green. So biotechnology, seeds and traits, crop protection, what are coming down the pipeline in terms of new formulations, new molecules, where are the the 2 billion in R&D is heavily on seeds and traits and crop protection. I think one of our colleagues and on the panel today mentioned, how do we also, marry or ensure that agriculture is in sync with biodiversity and environmental sustainability. And of course, it couldn't be a conference in 2021 on ag or development without using the word digital or without talking about digital agriculture. I think, if we're honest, that still, we're all still figuring out what that means. Seemingly every day there is a new ag startup coming out of Asia or Africa or North America purporting to offer farmers this, that, or the other thing. So I think we're in the early days of where digital agriculture is going, but it's certainly exciting. I think we would all agree that there's enormous potential, but it's asking the hard questions of, who are the winners and losers? How is it going to benefit people? And what does it really look like in terms of the realities if some of our farmer customers are still using first generation Nokia phones and others have thousands of hectares? And how can we be very sensible and thoughtful in bringing digital technology to agriculture? Next slide, please. So this is now the Food Chain Partnerships group, and the Food Value Chain team is the group that I'm a part of. And, I think what is the tagline? Leveraging and driving, our business and sustainability goals through partnerships. And, that's a very simple outline of a value chain. Farmers, importers, exporters, distributors, processors, retailers. We all know the dynamics across that value chain are extremely uneven, with some actors or operators holding a high degree of power, and others not so much. How do we balance that? How do we navigate that? How do we reconcile that? How do we bring these groups together and really try to find value for the different operators and ensure that we're doing that in a way that is fair, that is transparent, that is inclusive, that is open and honest? And again, I really always like to say it's very easy to present slides. It's very easy for us to make slides. It is not easy to implement these things, to talk about them openly and honestly, and to really try to drive and have the hard conversations. So that's what we're aiming to do. There's an advocacy component to the Food Chain Partnerships team, but there's mostly an operational component. So we really are talking to the IFCs of the world, but also, the Cereal Growers Association of Kenya, a very local implementing organization that is actually driving the demo plots, demonstrating the value proposition of companies like Bayer, bringing farmers there to see with their own eyes what biotech or what safe use or stewardship really means, what training in good agricultural practices means, how that can then be connected to the very rural or local agro dealer, connected to last mile activation and distribution and training. Somebody alluded to, access to finance, access to markets, access to agronomic advisory services. We know the challenges, we know the pain points, we know the key enablers. Implementing in the context of, where my heart is near and dear is Africa. Again, talking about a continent with 54 or 5 or 3, countries on the continent, it's crazy. We need to be talking, about individual countries, understanding those contexts, listening to the farmers and the colleagues in country, building trust, and really approaching this with humility and understanding that, building value chain partnerships is a journey, is something that needs experimentation, and is something that needs to be done in iterative models, where we need to get past this kind of developmental or romantic mindset of smallholders and view it, from my perspective of working for Bayer as, I through a private sector entity, and if a smallholder farmer is willing to part with their hard-earned money to buy technology or solutions that Bayer is offering, in my mind, that is the strongest signal that that farmer has made their own calculation, that there's a willingness to buy, that they see value in adopting technology for them in their context. So that's kind of at a high level what the food value chain team and our food chain partnerships initiative aims to achieve. Next slide, please. And I have just two more ideas. So this is kind of a map of the work that I do specifically. And it's really about building partnerships along the value chain with a focus on Africa, and increasingly now for me, more and more Asia. But the last year and a half or so, it's really been working quite closely with our priority countries on the continent. So I just take you through quickly. The left-hand side of the slide kind of lays out the 3 buckets that we have in terms of, how do we approach partnership development? And we've branded an internal initiative called One for Africa, where we want to try to leverage the consumer health, the pharma, and the ag divisions all together, where Bayer is so uniquely positioned to have, products that, really cover the life sciences and agriculture. Can we piggyback on each other's last mile distribution? Can we, work together with partners who also see the value of combining, agriculture, where if we're targeting smallholder farmers and the majority are women or young women, can we bring in a maternal health and child education component, or, biofortification, micronutrient products? So enormous potential on the cross-divisional components of Bayer. The second one is, really building a pipeline of new partnerships and making sure that we can bring in and have, today, great partnerships that are reaching 100,000 smallholders, but we're looking 5 years down the line and developing our pipeline, starting the discussions, because these partnerships take long time to come to the agreement, to come to the signature, to outline, what is the activity plan? What does the timeline look like? What does the budget look like? What does the activity detail look like? And then the third one is to take our existing partnerships and identify the ones that we call, tier 1, the ones that are really driving our business and sustainability commitments, taking those and broadening and deepening them, really looking at, how can we take them to the next level? Is it, bringing in another partner? Is it expanding it? Is it bringing in another component? Whatever it might be, we're there to try to really drive and build up further our existing tier 1 partnerships. So with that kind of frame, moving to the middle section, we have what we call the decision matrix, so a prioritization exercise where anybody internally who comes up with, I would like to do a project in Zambia. Okay, great idea. Let's see the proposal and let's run it through our list of criteria where we've built, an Excel sheet that does a lot of automated, algorithms on the back end, very easy to use on the front end, spits out, kind of a traffic light system, red, yellow, green, in terms of, okay, does this really look like a tier 1 partner according to the criteria that we as Bayer look for that cover both our business and sustainability objectives. The second two kind of long rectangles there just speak to, that we do this and enable that through the food chain partnerships function. The last slide, touches on kind of the farmer key enablers and those, the development world, everybody who loves to attend UN food system summits or talk about the SDGs are also going to want to talk about access to markets, access to finance, access to inputs. But, we like to be, or at least I like to be, very hard-nosed and very grounded and concrete and realistic in what that means, what are the challenges, and how we can actually drive those forward in some of the more challenging operating environments where we are. Ultimately, as I've really always liked to say, this is something that needs to be bottom up. It needs to be demand led. It is not Aaron sitting at a desk in Germany saying, in Ivory Coast, we need to do this. No, it's absolutely not like that. It needs to come from my colleagues in the Côte d'Ivoire who are saying, this is the partnership that we have. This is the crop that fits the priority. And this is how we want to go forward. And I am there to serve. I am there to support. And I am there to try to facilitate, coordinate, and bring in the right partnerships. Ultimately, we want farmers to be using technology safely, according to stewardship practices, according to good agricultural practices. And my belief, or Bayer's belief, is that when that happens, we are going to be driving our business, enabling the farmer to drive their livelihood, and doing that in a sustainable way. Just 2 more slides on the last concept I want to talk about, please. And so this is the example of one of the partnerships that we have with Solidaridad. They're an international development NGO based in the Netherlands. And probably a lot of you have heard of them. They work along the supply chain or value chains to drive exactly this, sustainability, to drive, good dynamics, power dynamics, or to work on the power dynamics of value chains, and ultimately to see development for smallholder farmers. We have a wonderful project with them with sugarcane in Mexico. And, it's iterative, it's experimentation, it's taking good agricultural practices. It's also working with governmental associations that are very strong in Mexico, building trust. And these things are never going to be a direct line, and the attributions are never going to be very easy. But we firmly believe that bringing these kinds of partners together, by organically or evolving, good things are going to happen. And I can't necessarily predict what those things are going to be. And I don't want to be a planner. I want to be a solution finder and adapt and be nimble and move around as need be, based on what's happening in those real-time conversations and what's really happening on the ground. So Solidaridad is a wonderful partner with Bayer that we're looking to expand our global cooperation, taking it to Africa, taking it to Asia, and taking on really salient and relevant topics, youth, food security, value chain development. Next slide, please. And this would be the last one with this concept. So on good agricultural practices, the team that I'm a part of has developed our own in-house program called BAYGAP, Bayer Good Agricultural Practices. And this is a way for us to enable farmers who are fairly low on the development ladder, let's say, to start the process of getting certified to be able to meet certifications that were required to export, let's say, to the European market. So this is a combined classroom and in-class training. There are 10 modules, and the last slide shows you just the names of the modules, covering everything from traceability, stewardship, technical crop protection application training, safe use, and all of the relevant practices to eventually meet a certification like Global Gap, where you're then going to enable export and hopefully growing your farming operation and your farming business. So this is a wonderful tool that Bayer has and that our team really uses as a conversation opener and starter, but also as a real tool on the ground with the value chain. If we're hearing from a company like Nestle or Danone or PepsiCo or Unilever, we're focused on regenerative ag. That's our number one priority. Soil quality or water usage or irrigation are our number one concerns. Then we say, okay, that's great. We hear you. We take Bay Gap. Then we can work with farmers and we can demonstratively show, working with our tool and working with Bayer's products and solutions, we're lowering, your water usage, or we're, improving or helping to improve soil quality. And these are the things that then our partners along the value chain want to be able to talk about, want to be able to communicate about, and which, where the retailers at the end of the chain want to also be able to see and talk about. So lots of complexities, lots of dynamics, lots of power shifting along the value chain, lots of things changing. But overall, I think, am I optimistic? Absolutely. Do I think that technology is going to open up a whole new, toolbox of opportunities and potential for the future? Absolutely. Do I think that we need to be very hard-nosed and challenging about, seeing smallholders and development as romantic? Absolutely. With that, I think I will pause, and sorry for maybe going a little bit over time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. That was an excellent presentation, and thanks to our other sponsor, Syngenta. I think we're really behind time now, so we'll just quickly get to our regional networking rooms and get to meet people from our region. I think we still have about 12 minutes to get to meet people. So thank you very much to our participants for still being there up to this point. We really appreciate your commitment to what we're doing. So Tammy, if you don't mind, you can turn us over. And thank you so much to our panelists and everyone who spoke today.